Hello everyone. Bonne soirée à tous et bienvenue à cette rencontre du comité de dérogation pour la ville d'Ottawa. It's not quite 6:30, but close enough, I think. So we're going to get started. I think the only person that we are missing from our panel at this particular point in time is Mr. Hindle, but these opening remarks will give him a chance to join us. So, all right. So again, welcome everyone. This is an online hearing of the Committee of Adjustment for the City of Ottawa. Committee of Adjustment is a quasi-judicial tribunal that's appointed by City Council to make decisions on certain types of certain types of applications under the Planning Act, most notably consents and minor variances, although there are some other types of applications that we deal with from time to time. My name is Anne Tremblay, and I am your chair for this evening. And with me also this evening is my fellow panel members. So Mr. Colin White, Ms. Kathleen Willis, Ms. Julia Markovich, and Mr. Scott Hindle. We also have the very capable staff from the Committee of Adjustment with us this evening as well. We have the Deputy Secretary Treasurer, Mr. Matt Garnett. We have two coordinators who make all of the magic happen behind the scenes, Ms. Mandy Nguyen and Ms. Emily Byers. So, hello everyone. Okay, so just take note, please, that this session is being live streamed on YouTube, and it will get archived along with the agenda on the city's webpage. So if you need to access either one, you can do so through City of Ottawa's Committee of Adjustment pages. And if you have any issues, just reach out to our committee staff. They can help you with that. A couple of just reminders in some ways. I know some of you know this already, but I just want to ensure that anyone new to the proceedings understands the jurisdiction that the committee has and what we can't and can't do. There's a number of notable items, for example, so that we can't really discuss or consider any issues with regards to the proposal that's not part of the application. So if there's an issue with an application that for whatever reason you have some concerns about, if there's no relief required from a zoning bylaw, for example, for that, then it's not something that we can discuss as part of our hearing process. We also don't talk about issues regarding noise or pollution or property maintenance. And also we treat all applications as if no construction has occurred. So, you know, if something has happened formally on the property, that's one thing, but for the purposes of making decisions, we treat it as an application that's prior to construction. We will not entertain any kind of negative or adverse comments about anyone involved in these proceedings. So either the applicant, agent, owner, a resident, anyone involved in the proceedings. The next thing that we really need to signal is that if we discover during the course of discussions that there's been an issue with regards to the amount of relief requested, so in other words, more relief from the zoning bylaw is required, or if there's a new minor variance that's been identified, in those cases, we need to adjourn the hearing and allow for a recirculation of the application with those missing components or those corrected components. If there is sometimes a technical error, we don't recirculate under those circumstances, but for the most part, if it truly is relief related to the development, not a rounding error, then we do recirculate. So as part of the statutory public notification process and requirements under the regulations of the Planning Act, each applicant is required to post a sign on the property and to file with us a statutory declaration confirming the sign posting. So what we've done on these with these virtual hearings is we've adopted a verbal oath or solemn declaration. And I believe that I will be doing that for all the applications that we hear this evening. So be prepared to hear me read to you. Also, I think that just note that if we don't get that from you, for whatever reason, then we can't hear your application. With respect to quorum, if we lose quorum, we're 5 tonight, so the risk is relatively low. but if we lose quorum, we try to reestablish connectivity. And if we can't do that, we take whatever items will be remaining and we'll put them on to the next meeting. It's not happened yet. Let's hope. And I think that, it won't be all that long before we're segueing it back into online, or not online hearings, sorry, in-person hearings. So you saw the agenda at the beginning. That agenda essentially is the order in which the applications come into the committee. The chair has a discretion to move some of those items around, and we will be doing that because we've also adopted another type of procedure that we follow. So in some cases, we can fast track applications where we will not require a presentation, and for some applications, we'll still require a presentation. So for those, then there's a separation. We'll hear the fast track ones first, and then we'll go to the presentations. Where it's a fast track, there's I think all we'll do at that point, and what we've done in practice, is to get clarification from the rest of the panel members if there's any questions. So we do get a chance to look at these applications and the files in detail before we get here, but sometimes there's some elements that either there's some conflicting information or it's not quite clear what was intended by a comment or something that's been posted on file. And we can ask, that's the opportunity for the panel to ask questions of the agent, owner, or applicant to get that clarification. So once that's done, we're going to go to the public portion of the hearing. So I do have a speakers list, and not very many people registered for this evening, and that doesn't really matter in a way, because if you would like to address the panel, it's easy to do that. All you need to do is raise your hand, and the coordinators will bring you into the panelist side of this hearing, and then you can get your time with the panel members and ask your questions or voice your concerns. So when you do that, though, the beauty about being on the speakers list is we know who you are. We have your name and your address and all that information. If you come forward to speak to the panel and you're not on the speakers list, then I would ask you to start with your name and your municipal address. And I may need you to spell out your last name just so that we have that clarity for the record. Then once we've heard from everyone who wants to address the panel, and we may ask you questions, then we close down the public portion and we go to deliberations at that point, and then make a decision. So what that means, obviously, is we either grant the application or refuse the application. As I said, we might choose to adjourn the application. And then there's another option, which is to reserve on an application where we get a lot of additional new evidence that's given to us normally during the public hearing portion. So in those cases, what we do is we would adjourn the overall hearing once the evening is over for all of the hearings, and then we regroup and meet to complete our deliberations on that application. So the decision is still made the same evening. There's no delay in a decision. And of course, once we have all of those decisions, what typically happens is that 10 days, or not typically, it's actually part of the regulations, folks. So 10 days after the hearing, a written formal decision outlining the panel's reasoning on the application is issued. And then anyone who wants to have a copy of that decision can get a copy. All you need to do is to reach out to our committee staff if you are already part of I think you just reach out to committee staff to get that formal written decision. And then there's a 20-day appeal period, during which time the decision can be appealed to the local, the Ontario Land Tribunal. So with that, I can go to the items of business. Is there anyone who has a declaration conflict of interest for any of the items on either our agenda or on the agenda of any other panel today? And I'm not seeing any. So for the record, there's no conflict of interest from anyone here this evening, the panel. So, and then with that, do we have confirmation of minutes? We don't have any minutes to confirm this evening. So we will go straight to the adjournment requests in that case. And we have two. So we'll start with 8 and 9, which is for 422 Hartley Avenue. And I'm looking for Mr. Cooper. And I think the planner is Ms. Kelly, if you can come forward as well. Mr. Cooper. Coordinators, can you please confirm if Mr. Cooper is with us?
Madam Chair, he should be joining now.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening. Sorry for the delay.
No issues at all. So good evening, Mr. Cooper. So I understand then that there's a request. It's a request for our planning staff and that you're aware, because we feel that there's a potential for additional minor variances. You're aware of that?
I am, yes. I have had consultations with the planning staff.
Okay. And so I think you've already made arrangements as well to ensure that there's the additional, so I've identified what those minor variances are, and is that right?
That's correct, yes, and updated the site plan and submitted the site plan to both the committee and to Planner Kelly as well.
All right, so if we were to adjourn this item, would July 6th work?
July 6th, yes, certainly.
All right, so you understand there's some administrative things that you have to take care of just to be sure that that can get met though. So just be sure that you have all of your documentation and fees paid and all that before, well, as soon as possible, because yeah, if you could do that, that would be great.
Understood.
Okay, well, in which case, Ms. Kelly, we may not need to get your confirmation on this, so that's good. Any questions from the panel? All right, so I'm going to make, I don't think we had any speakers for this, but is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak either for or against this request for adjournment to July 6th? At which point we will have an application that will include additional elements to it. All right, I'm not seeing anybody come forward. So members of the panel, all those in favor? Okay, so for the record, decision is unanimous. We are adjourning to July 6th. So we'll see you then, Mr. Cooper.
Thank you very much. Good evening.
All right, have a nice evening. Okay, the next application is number 10 for 290 Montfort Street, and I'm looking for Mr. Robinson. Good evening, Mr. Robinson. So my understanding is you have made a request for adjournment sine die. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And you want to tell us why?
Yes, we received comments in the last few days from the tenant and a tenant's organization, and also the community association, that we'd like some time to address. The owner would like to speak to has started some discussions with the tenants, and we'd like to come back to you at a point at which a number of those issues have been resolved.
All right, thank you. Any questions from the panel members? All right, so Mr. Robinson, I think that's very wise of you to be proceeding along those lines. I do have speakers, but only to the item. So I'm just going to make a call out. Is there anyone in the audience that's listening and has an interest in this application who wants to speak to the adjournment request? It's sine die. Ms. Stewart Mundy?
My only request is that the people who have been invited, who have already signed up for this particular meeting, could they also be re-invited to when the meeting is called again?
So a sine die adjournment means that there's a whole new notification process. So essentially the application for us is gone. So there has to be a restart of the application process, which means you're going to get all the normal notification again.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Because like, so I know some people in regards to like tenants and that we're not property owners, so they would have to actually watch for a new sign to come up. Is there a way to get them on an email list should this come up again?
I would reach out to our committee staff about that. And if you want to be notified specifically about it, absolutely.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. We appreciate your interest in the application and in the process.
Oops,
okay. So folks, anyone else in the audience? All right, I'm not seeing anybody else come forward. So panel members, all those in favor of a sine die adjournment of this application? All those in favor?
Yes, no, I'd like
Wait,
to.
oh, okay.
I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I was having a difficulty getting in the meeting. Now, I would like to know, is the owner the same owner that owns the 309 Mofal?
So Mr. Guy?
Sorry, my name is Guy Dagenet, yes.
Monsieur Dagenet, on parle pas de l'application comme c'est là, on fait juste, c'est juste pour faire le rapport, on rapporte l'application, puis en fait, on ne le rapporte pas, on ferme l'application comme c'est là.
OK.
Vous êtes d'accord?
Oui, c'est parce que je pensais qu'on était aussi pour parler aujourd'hui des autres propriétés sur la même rue, parce qu'il y a des problèmes.
Non, on ne parle pas du tout. Là. L'application est fermée essentiellement. Si on va voter, là, mais c'est la question comme c'est là, c'est de fermer l'application pour que ce soit un renouvellement d'application à travers M. Robinson si jamais il décide de recommencer le processus.
OK.
OK? Merci.
Merci.
Bonne soirée.
Bonne soirée.
Anyone else? Okay, so I'm not seeing anybody else come forward. So with that, then panel member, all those in favor of a sine die adjournment. All right, so for the record, Mr. Robinson, the application is sine died and adjourned. We're going to wish you good luck and some fruitful discussions with everyone involved.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening, everyone.
All right, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay. All right, so that brings us to our regular hearing items. So application number 1, which is for 2183 Fox Crescent. I believe I'm looking for Mr. Segreto on this one.
Good evening, Madam Chair.
Good evening, Mr. Segreto. So we're not going to request a presentation on this application from you this evening. So I'm going to, wait.
Yo.
All right. Yes, I got ahead of myself. Here we go. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and that it was clearly visible and legible for the entirety of that time? You either swear or affirm that to be true.
I do swear.
All right, thank you. Okay, back to the application then. So no presentation required. I'm just going to open it up to questions from the panel members. Anyone? Mr. White, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a question for Ms. Kelly, staff planner. In the Mr. Segreto submission, there's mention that the requirement for the increase in height minor variance is due to the elevation of sewers in the storm sewers in the roadway. I just want to confirm that staff agrees with that contention, that really the only reason for the minor variance, and it's a very, in my view, very minor variance, less than a meter in height, that's the sole reason for the support of the minor variance, the factor that weighs into that.
You looking for Ms. Kelly? Yeah, okay, go ahead, Ms. Kelly.
Through you, Madam Chair, in response to your question, Mr. White, I can confirm that that is one of the reasons for the request for minor variance. This is an ongoing issue along Fox. There were previous minor variance applications along this stretch, and that was also mentioned as a reason. I cannot confirm that it's the only reason for the variance, but it is one of.
Thank you. It strikes me that's a fairly significant reason on its own, notwithstanding whatever other reason there might be. I can't imagine what that might be. Perhaps Mr. Segreto can expand on that. But yeah, I can fully understand that elevation of the sewers and the roadway will have an impact on the height of a building due to the floor heights, etc., the design of the building. So I have no problem. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. White. Anyone else from the committee? So, Mr. Segreto, I noticed that you have a driveway that that essentially slopes towards the towards the house. Can you just confirm that you have, in fact, checked those slopes and that they will meet the maximum limitations with regards to that? And can you confirm that?
My understanding is that they do meet all those requirements. I personally have not done these plans. These plans have been done by an architect. And I was called in to see if I could help with respect to the height variance on this application, due to the fact that the other two applications that we did do on Fox in 2017, I believe it was for 2203 Fox and also for 2201 Fox, they were height variances again due to the fact of the sewers. But my understanding is that all the proper slopes are there with respect to the percentages with the driveway.
Can you tell me what other reasons? So there was Ms. Kelly alluded to the possibility of more than just the sewer heights being the reason. Can you tell me what other reasons you would have?
For speaking for myself, I can only speak with respect for the sewers, but I think when you look at it with respect to the design of the house, which I can't speak for, I didn't design this house, but it looks like what the clients are trying to do is to have the garage in the basement and obviously trying to pick up some additional square footage above the garage where they may end up having a family room or whatever. So that's a sort of a more desirable footprint for the owners. But again, I can't speak for that. I didn't design this house.
All right, so I say that the owners are here and they have their hand up. So I'm going to ask you the question then. In terms of the request for height increase, we've heard that it's because of the sewers. Is there any other reason?
Yeah. Hello, Madam Trombley and everyone. So yes, so the sewer system is one of the reasons. And the other reason is the design of the house. We designed the house to be energy efficient. So we worked with the energy specialist to maximize the light coming, the sun exposure to the house. And this is why I don't know if you see the design, there's a lot of windows in that area, but also if we want to put the solar panels also. So everything was worked toward an eco design for that house. So this is part of the design, and having also the garage underneath the house instead of blocking like almost half of the front of the house. So this will allow better exposure to sun. So it's also this is another reason why we have this design.
All right, thank you very much for that. It does explain, why some additional height. The reason I raised the driveway is because there are maximum slopes on driveways, and sometimes what we see, the reasons for a height increase is because in order to allow the height and these reversed driveways to work in keeping with the maximum slopes, it pushes up the height of the structure. So it just seemed from the elevations that I've seen that it's quite a steep slope. So I just want to be very mindful that in fact those slopes have been checked and that there's no issue with them. Okay.
Yeah, so that's correct. So for the slope, we've been in contact with Christina Cooley from the city. We've worked and we checked like between her and our architect just to make sure that everything is done according to the city's requirements. So,
all right,
yeah,
perfect. I just wouldn't want you to run into a problem later on, but if you've checked that box, that's excellent.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions from the committee before I go to the public? All right, I don't have anybody on the speakers list. So is there anyone in the audience that would like to come forward and address the committee on this application, whether you're opposed or in favor? Just raise your hand to come forward. All right, I'm not seeing anybody come forward, so I think we can go to a decision, members of the panel. So all those in favor of this application for minor variances? All right, so for the record, the application is granted unanimously. So thank you very much and good luck.
Thank you. Thank you.
Excuse me. So, sorry, Madam Tremblay.
Yes.
Yeah, so we have just a question regarding the driveway and the tree. So I see Mrs. Young here. So I don't know if this is the time to clarify this.
Well, if it is, so it all depends on whether it'll affect our decision to approve. So if it's something that's a technical matter that you probably are just better off contacting Ms. Young directly. Would that be possible, Ms. Young?
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
And then you can resolve those issues. If there's a
Okay.
concern, it might need to come back to us, but I don't think so. I think we're all right. Okay.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a nice evening. All right. We're going to application number 3, and it's for 7 Kemp Drive. And it's looking for Ms. Gashin. Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Chair.
So I'm going to need to read to you. So just respond when I get to the end. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days prior to the hearing and that it was legible and visible for the entirety of that time? Do you either swear or affirm that to be true?
I swear.
All right, perfect. I believe that there's a slight housekeeping change required to the notice. So my understanding is that the depth of the severed lands is in fact 46.91 and not 46.89. Can you confirm that, please?
Of the severed lands, one moment, please. I'm just pulling up the draft art plan that was submitted. I had seen that in the staff report, but I assumed perhaps it was a typo. So 46.89 is what it's showing on the draft art plan. And then in the staff report, it's saying.
So Ms. Kelly, do you want to come forward? All right. So I take it you're both looking at the survey plan.
Yes, through you, Madam Chair, I can clarify. On the notice, it reads that the depth is 46.89. On the submitted survey, it reads 46.91.
All right, so Ms. Gashan.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yes, I'm looking at it now. It's just, yes, I can confirm that the lands to be severed are indeed 46.91. The center lot line is 46.89. That's the reason for the confusion. So, but I don't believe that affects the compliance of the application.
Nope, we're just doing a notice correction. That's all. Sometimes it had nothing to do with the wording on the minor variances. We just want to make sure that the notice is correct. Okay. All right. So we don't need a presentation from you this evening on the application. Are there any questions from the members of the panel? Yes, Mr. Hindle.
Yeah, I just want to confirm it wasn't clear from the staff report. I think it was implied, but I just want to confirm that both lots, once severed, would be in full conformity with the zoning.
Yes, through you, Madam Chair, both lots will be in conformity.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? Oh, come back, Miss Kelly. I have one for you. All right, so you have, it's interesting because you have no comments, but then you do have some concerns with regards to the impact on of the detached dwelling on the tree canopy and on the space available on site for replacement planting. So you strongly recommend at some point, it's not coming to me right at this moment, that there be a redesign. Where is it? On that. So, and in fact, you do even provide us with some wording about the committees of adjustments ability to refuse a development application if it deems the loss of trees avoidable. Can you just expand a little bit about what those comments mean?
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. We don't have any concerns with regards to the consent because the consent application does conform with the considerations or the criteria under the Planning Act. That being said, through conversations with Miss Nancy Young, she identified that the application is proposing to remove all of the trees on the property, and staff considered the removal to be unnecessary should there be a redesign of the pool and the landscaped area in the rear. So we've attached a condition to the consent to be able to work with the owners and applicants moving forward.
All right, Ms. Young, did you wanted to give you a chance to also provide comment if you wanted to?
Sure, yes, I think Ms. Kelly covered it very well. I don't have any concerns with the severance itself. It is simply the pool and just the amount of hardscaping in the rear yard. There's really no space provided for even planting many of the compensation trees that would be required for the loss if all of these were to be approved. And I don't see any reason to approve them. Given that there is space on the lot, particularly now after there has been storm damage and several trees have fallen, there is space on the property to shift things around. So that was the point of those comments.
All right, and the conditions gives you the latitude you need to be sure that there is the proper steps taken to maximize or optimize tree coverage, correct?
Yes, that's right.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much. That was the end of my questions at this point. Mr. White, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess now that we're talking about design, and I don't think it's really necessary to talk about it with respect to simply dividing the lot. However, if we are, I think it should be pointed out that there is to me, there may be an issue with respect to the site plan and the elevation drawings that were submitted. The elevation drawings in particular indicate a 3-car garage arrangement. And I would suspect that might create some problems with respect to the driveway width provisions of the zoning bylaw, if that's the case. I note on the site plan that's attached that the driveway is shown only in front of one of the garage doors. It's not shown in front of the third garage door on the site plan. However, it's pretty clear there's a car parked in front of the third garage door spot, which indicates that the driveway may be in excess of the bylaw provisions with respect to width. I just bring that up, seeing as we're talking about design issues here, not that it's something that we are deciding upon tonight. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. White. It's always, if we see these things and we can flag them, it's probably good information, right? Just to ensure that everybody understands, what they need to be mindful of when they actually get on with building permit and the actual development of the site. So, and I'm sure Ms. Gatchain, is that how you pronounce her name?
It's Gatchny.
Gatchny. Okay.
Good.
All right. So I'm sure those comments, Mr. White, are helpful to our agent and can be brought back just as a flag. So that's good. In that case, then I do not have any speakers on my speakers list. So is there anyone in the audience who'd like to come forward and speak to this application for consent? All right, I'm not seeing anybody come forward. So with that, then, members of the panel, I believe that we can make a decision at this point. So all those in favor of the application? All right, so for the record, the decision is unanimous. The application is granted. And with that, then, thank you, Ms. Gatchny, and good luck.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Have a good night. Bye.
Have a nice evening. All right, we're going to go to application number 4, which is for 11 Swans Way, and I'm looking for Ms. Dow.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the committee.
Good evening. So before we get underway, and before I forget, do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days prior to the hearing, and that the sign was clearly visible and legible for the entirety of that time? Do you either swear or affirm that to be true?
I affirm.
All right, thank you very much. Now, no, I don't think there's any housekeeping items. No presentation required. So I'm just going to open it up directly to our members of the panel. Any questions, anyone, on this application for minor variance? Yes, Mr. Handel, go ahead, please.
Yeah, could I get staff to walk us through the changes to the staff opinion on this one as to why it's a support now as opposed to concerns from previously?
Bauer, I believe this is yours.
Yes, thank you for the question. So there were initially concerns that with the width of the driveway, there wouldn't be sufficient space for trees. However, since the release of the initial report, there have been conversations with the applicant to provide a more permeable surface on the driveway.
Okay, so I always wonder, is it me? Did I freeze? So, okay, so Mr. Hindle, we may have to wait a moment.
That's fine. Maybe I'll ask a separate question then to Ms. Daou. Can you walk me through the rationale is for the 3-car garage in this case? I assume it's just that the applicant would like parking and would like three-car garage storage.
Through you, Madam Chair. Yeah, so the applicant actually lives in this neighborhood and is actually just located north of the property, and their current property also has a 3-car garage situation. So it's in part for additional parking. 3-car garage is not prohibited under the zoning bylaw. It also provides added space for the owner for things like waste storage, lawn tractor storage, bicycle storage, and so forth, in addition to most people in the neighborhood having at least 2 cars in this particular neighborhood.
Okay. And then going through your staff report or your report on the rationale for this application. So it looks like the rationale for the location is really to maximize rear yard space and to optimize the layout of the interior of the home. Is that as I understand it?
That's correct. Through you, Madam Chair. This is a very sort of oddly shaped property. And so the architects did do quite a bit of analysis just to determine what the most functional layout for the property would be in terms of, as you say, maximizing the usable amenity space and the interaction between the actual living space and the rear yard, while still meeting the required front yard setbacks with the angled property lines, and not creating a floor plate that would be sort of oddly shaped, similar to what the garage sort of has to be to respond to those articulations.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Mr. White, you're up next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Daou, am I correct in understanding that the width of the driveway at the property line and to the paved surface of Swans Way will conform to the maximum permitted driveway width, and that we are really only dealing with a portion of, and it seems to be a tapered driveway into the what I'll call the 3rd garage. It's a tapered portion, so it's not a full increase in width required from the garage to the property line and out to the roadway. Am I correct in all of that?
That's correct. Through you, Madam Chair, for the throat length to Swans Way, as you have noted, is the required 6 meters. And then we have the tapered portion, and the area that is the driveway area that is occupying that portion of the driveway, is only actually about 16 meters squared in size, in excess of what would be permitted if this were to be a straight 6 meter wide driveway all the way from street to the garage entrance. So at its widest point, it is 10.4 meters and then tapers to the 6 at the property line.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, any additional questions? All right, Ms. Howard, can you just confirm is there a secondary dwelling unit being proposed in this dwelling?
No, there's no secondary dwelling unit proposed.
Okay, just wondering whether that was part of the plan or not. Okay, then in that case, I have no more questions from the panel. Nobody on my speakers list, so I'm just going to make a call out then to the public. Is there anyone who would like to come forward and speak to this application, either in favor or opposed? Okay, I'm not seeing anybody come forward. So with that, then, panel members, I believe that we can move to a decision. All those in favor? All right, for the record, the application is granted unanimously. And I think that's the rest of our discussion. I don't think there's anything else to go through.
Madam Chair, I'll just note my dissent on this one, actually. I'm not in favor in this application of kind of planning for cars. So.
Okay. All right. I guess maybe I thought your hand was up, or okay. So thank you for saying that then, because I totally missed that, Mr. Hindle. My apologies to you. So all right. So we do have a dissent over the parking, I suppose, in the garages. So all right. Well, good luck and thank you.
Thanks so much. Have a good evening.
All right, I am actually going to go to application number 2 next, which is for 1138 Snow Street. I'm looking for Mr. Soar. Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Chair.
So I believe we are going to be requesting a presentation from you this evening. So we're going to let you run through that, and then the panel may have some questions for you. So,
excellent. I believe we have a slide deck. If the coordinator could put the slides up.
Madam Chair, the declaration.
Oh yes, thank you very much, Ms. McQuaig. So, do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted first at the property to which the application applies, that it was there for the prescribed number of days prior to the hearing, and that it was clearly visible and legible for the entirety of that time? Do you either swear or affirm that to be true?
Yes, I swear. Yeah, we checked.
Right.
Even during the storm, we checked. So.
Okay, excellent. Actually, it's a very good point, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. What are we looking at?
I'm not sure.
So this is not your slide deck.
No,
okay,
this is my slide deck.
All right, perfect.
That looks
okay,
better. Okay. So good evening, Honorable Chair and members of the committee. My name is Arjun Soor, and I will be presenting the proposed minor variance application for 1138 to 1140 Snow Street. With me on the call, as you've seen, is my colleague Christine McQuaig and the property owner Tariq Usari. And I'd just like to add that following my presentation, I'd like to defer a little bit of time to Tariq to speak to the application as well. Next slide, please. So the subject property is located on the south side of Snow Street in the Overbrook MacArthur neighborhood. Next slide, please. So the property is designated general urban area in the current official plan and neighborhood within the inner urban transect in the new official plan. It's also zoned residential third density, subzone BV. Next slide, please. So this just shows an aerial view of the site. If we could go to the next slide. So the subject site has lot widths of 5.81 meters, lot depths of 30.49 meters, and lot areas of 175 square meters on part 1 and 175.5 square meters on part 2. And I'd just like to note that these lots were have already been established through a previously approved severance. Next slide, please. So these are just some images of the site. As you can see, it's a vacant parcel at this moment. Next slide, please. So these images just show some of the surrounding context in the area. If we could go to the next slide. So the proposed development is to construct 2 3-story semi-detached dwellings. The proposal constitutes a more efficient use of the subject site, adding 2 new housing units and increased density. We'll also be providing narrow single driveways, which will be constructed out of permeable pavers, and 2 tire tracks of standard pavers, which limit the impact of the hardscaping and ensure that there's adequate surface permeability. The development notably meets all required building setbacks and yard areas. Next slide, please. So this just shows the proposed site plan, and you can see that the compliant provisions are the blue lines are outlined in blue, and the non-compliant provisions are those outlined in red. Also shown here is the amount of permeable surfaces, which intuitively are green colored, and then you can see that it's much more than the comparatively small amount of actual hardscaping on the site, which is the gray color there. Next slide, please. So these are just the front and rear elevations. If you could go to the next slide. And these are just the side elevations. So we'll go to the next slide as well. So the requested variances for both parcels are to permit an individual driveway with a maximum lot width of 2.6 meters, whereas the bylaw does not permit a driveway on a lot with a width of 6 meters or less, and to permit a 2.44 meter deck in the rear yard, whereas the maximum deck projection is 2 meters. I'd also like to note that our previous version of our submission did have a variance for aggregate front yard soft landscaping, but we worked with staff, and at the request of planning staff, we issued a bit of a redesign in order to meet that aggregate front yard soft landscaping provision. Next slide, please. So now I'm going to move into a discussion of the 4 tests, beginning with whether the variance is minor. So the proposed driveway is considered minor, as the lots are only 0.2 meters less than what is the required lot width in order to permit a driveway. Additionally, all the landscaped area requirements in the front yard, as I touched on before, they're still met despite the provision of driveways. And the permeable pavers used to build the driveway will contribute to additional surface permeability in the front yard, and the hardscaping equivalent of providing a 1.24 meter driveway. The proposed deck projection is also considered minor, as the rear landscaping will not be affected at all, while additional usable amenity space will be provided for the homeowners. Additionally, the setback of the rear deck of 3.57 meters and 3.8 meters exceeds the bylaw requirement, and trees are also located in the rear yard, which further buffer that projection's impact on neighbors. Next slide, please. So this slide shows some of the shows that the proposed development will have a comparable amount of hardscaping to a single detached dwelling on like a combined lot with only a single driveway. On the right side, you see the lots indicated in red are those that have similar or more hardscaping than the proposed development. So basically what these 2 images indicate overall is that the proposal results in less hardscaping as a proportion of the lot than many of the other dwellings in the immediate area. Next slide, please. So the second test is for whether the variances meet the intent and purpose of the official plan. So the variances do meet the intent of the official plan to accommodate a variety of compatible residential build forms and to accommodate growth through intensification. The proposal adds 2 new housing units through gentle intensification and results in a compatible ground-oriented built form that fills in the existing streetscape. The variances also meet the intent of the OP to be compatible with neighboring dwellings and demonstrate good urban design, as the resulting dwellings are of an appropriate height and massing and don't generate any adverse shadowing or overlook, including from the increased balcony projection in the rear yard. Next slide, please. So the variances also meet the intent of the zoning bylaw to ensure that the provision of driveways does not impede soft landscaping provision or stormwater management in any way. The aggregate front yard soft landscape area is met, as I mentioned before, and no trees are lost as a result of the development. The permeable pavers ensure that adequate surface permeability is also provided in order to manage stormwater appropriately. It should also be noted that the intent of the zoning as it applies to this site is not to regulate the appearance of garages in the building facade. Rather, the intent is to ensure that driveways do not result in insufficient landscaping on narrow lots. And this intent is met, as the overall amount of permeable surfaces on the property is greater than what would be provided on a 6.1 meter lot, so just slightly bigger, with a permitted driveway. The variances also meet the intent of the maximum deck projection provision to ensure that adequate soft landscaping in the rear yard is maintained and that overlook into neighboring rear yards is minimized. The proposed rear deck is set back 3.57 meters and 3.8 meters from the rear lot line, as I mentioned before, which greatly exceeds the required 1 meter setback. There's also some tree cover along the rear lot line, which provides a visual buffer from rear neighbors, and overlook is buffered from the easterly neighbor by their detached garage. Furthermore, I should add that the deck does not impact any rear landscaping at all. It's above the ground floor and it provides residents with more amenity space. Next slide, please. So lastly, the variances are considered a suitable and desirable use of land, resulting in a compact, efficient built form and new housing through additional density. The proposal meets the intent of the both official plans and also of the R3 zone. Next slide, please. So based on this, it is the opinion of Q9 Planning and Design that the proposed minor variances constitute good land use planning. Next slide, please. So before I finish, as I mentioned at the start of my presentation, I'd just like to defer a little bit of time to the property owner, Tara Kusari, who's prepared some comments to speak to as well. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to let you know that we've been living in this area for the last 40 years. All my extended family live here. We live all around the neighborhood. I'm right on Claude Street, which is right around the corner. And in this case, we've been living here since 1975. And in this case, the identity of the neighborhood is really important to us. It is important to us for us to preserve the environment, to make sure that we are complying with the case, having preserve the identity of the property as well. And I think we wanted to make sure that we are able to attract families to the properties, and with especially young families where you need the garage to store bikes, waste and strollers and stuff like that. And in this case, at least have a space for one car. And one of the homes will be my niece is planning to move here. She has a 1-year-old and expecting a second. She's moving from Toronto, and in this case, unfortunately, without a parking spot, it would not be feasible for her nor any other family with young children. And in this case, it's not. We're just asking for just one car spot and the park and the garage, which with like any other family gets filled with anything but a car. Okay.
All right. Thank you very much for your comments, Mr. Hursari. All right. So before we go to questions from the committee, though, Mr. Sewer, you actually raised something that I missed. And so just for the record, really do need to read this into the record, is the deletion of minor variance E from the application. So we're amending the application officially to reflect that. And I know you mentioned it in your comments in your presentation, but I just want to make sure that it's very clear for the record that we are modifying the notice to do that. All right. Okay, so that said, Now that it's in the record, I'm opening this up to questions from the panel. Anyone? Mr. White.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Question to staff. Just my reading of section 139 of the zoning bylaw. Had we had an additional, am I correct in this? Had we had an additional about 0.2 meters of lot width for each of these units, that we wouldn't require this minor variance to the driveway width? And I guess secondly, I'd like to know what happened with the units next door, 1132 and 1136, which appear to be recently approved severances or consents to allow semi-detached units. But if we're looking at the submission that the applicant has submitted, the photograph of that parcel, that lot, we've got nothing but driveway across the whole frontage of that of those two units. How can we avoid that situation? Well, first of all, what happened there? And secondly, how can we avoid that situation here, which appeared to, if we approve this application, would appear to be at least have some potential for that kind of thing to occur? Thank you.
So I believe Ms. McQuaig has an answer for us.
I do. Thank you, Madam Chair. The original severances were approved in 2010, and that was before the provisions that came into place that regulated driveways, particularly in the way they do now. And so these two lots and the other two lots that you were referring to, I believe were all created at the same time. And so I suspect that the building permit for the other two lots and that other semi went forward before the zoning provisions came into place to regulate driveways on lots that are less than 6 meters. So I think that's the situation we're in now. And so this situation is protected because of those provisions that are in place now. And that's why we worked with staff to make sure that we met the aggregate soft landscaping and worked with the client to, see their desire of keeping the community very nice and welcoming and have that green space through permeable pavers and really reducing the appearance of the driveway. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to follow up to staff, can staff confirm that that driveway situation on the adjacent property conformed to the provisions of the bylaw at the time? In other words, is it legal non-conforming now?
Ms. Bauer?
Thank you for that question, Mr. White, and I do apologize for my technical difficulties earlier. I can't comment on the specific situation on the adjacent property. However, I agree with Ms. McQuaig's analysis that there have been additional provisions that have been implemented beginning in the fall of 2020 that would prohibit that from reoccurring in the future.
Madam Chair, I just wonder if it might be worth following up to see if something can be done about that adjacent property. If there is any bylaw issue, that perhaps staff could follow up with bylaw enforcement to check on that.
I suppose we could, yeah, for sure. If committee staff would mind taking note of that, and maybe just it's just for our own understanding about how some of these things evolve. To be frankly honest, because when the committee approves things, and Mr. White, not to put words in your mouth, but when the committee approves things, it's according to site plans that are filed with the application or revised, but in any event, whatever is before us and what's approved is what we expect to have developed. So then we see these situations in the future where they don't quite look the way they were approved. So this may be exactly one of those situations. So it would be interesting to see if we could get a little bit of history on it. So I take it, Mr. Garnett, you're taking some notes on that for us.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you, Mr. Garnett, for taking note. Okay, any other questions? Mr. Hindle, I thought I saw your hand up earlier. Did you have a question?
I had basically the same question as to the, the 0.2 and how that shifts the what's permitted in this case. So I think I'm good.
All right, okay. I just have a couple of questions. And so could you just give me an idea of what the square footage or square meters of that, of each unit would be? So if I were to buy that house, then how many square meters am I buying, or how many square feet am I buying?
I'm not sure off the top of my head what the square footage of the house itself would be. I think Tarek might be able to answer that a little bit better than I could. Yeah, maybe I can defer that to Tarek for the size of the houses themselves.
Oh, you're on mute, Mr. Hussari. You're still on mute. Mr. Hussari, you're still on mute.
Okay. Thank you. Not counting the basement, it is, I believe, 2,1 second, sorry. 2,200 square, with the basement, 2,400 square feet.
All right, so
I'll
normally the
double-check.
normally basements aren't included in the square footage, so unless they're fully finished. But I'm assuming, so you're saying around 2,300, 2,400 square feet for each unit. And that's a big house. That's a big house, bigger than the house I lived in most of my life.
let me double check that. Just 1 second, if you don't mind.
Okay, I'm only asking, and I'll tell you why, because there's a number of amendments that are being requested that speak to the size of the dwelling, for one. You talked about it being affordable housing, but we've seen what the market's been doing for the last 18 to 24 months. And so I just wanted to get a real sense of, is that really truly what we're going to wind up with? And then, so the question becomes, was there any thought to possibly reducing the size of the dwelling slightly in order to avoid two of your minor variances, which has to do with the projection? So just wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Well, the first thought, I think, even if you reduce the size, I think you still have the parking issue. You still have the parking issue.
You do. I'm talking specifically about the projection.
Okay. The size itself, the size itself in this particular case, and I think from an affordability perspective, the fact that there is a planned secondary dwelling, if someone were to purchase this property, when someone purchased it, they'd be able to get an additional income to help them pay for the mortgage. So in that case, it becomes a bit more affordable if they're able to live in one part and able to rent a second. I noticed that Christine has her hand up. So
I just want to keep asking you questions for a minute. I will get to everybody else when I get there. I just want to get so I think what I've heard from you is that there's also secondary dwelling units that are planned as part of the development.
It is planned, yes.
For both halves of the dwellings?
I believe, yes.
Okay. All right. And is that the finished basement portion?
Yes.
I see. Okay. So there was both Ms. McCraig and Ms. Sewer. I'm going to go in the order the hand went up. So Mr. Sewer, go ahead, please.
So my understanding, Ms. McCraig and Mr. Hussari could correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think that decreasing the size of the dwelling would necessarily affect the deck projection variance. Maybe I'm not understanding it correctly, but yeah, I'm not sure how it would actually affect the deck projection variance. Maybe I'll defer that to Christine.
All right, thank you, Ms. McCraig. Go ahead.
Yes, Madam Chair, I was going to raise the same point. The deck projection and the driveway variance are the only two variances we need, and they don't relate to the built form size of the dwelling. So even if the dwelling were reduced in size, we would likely still have those exact two variances.
wouldn't you be in a situation where you may have a back wall of the house that's actually not as far into, so, oh, I see what you're saying. So it's actually the balcony itself that's the projection beyond what it would be. Okay, all right, I get it. Yeah, so you probably would have that. Okay,
Correct.
I just wanted to get some sense of what was looked at in order to try and mitigate some of these things. Okay, so any other questions then? I'm done. Anybody else? All right. With that then, Ms. McQuaid, your hand's still up. Is that from before?
No, Madam Chair, if you'll permit me just one more comment. In our analysis and in looking at this situation and the deck projection and the variance for that, we do note that beyond the line of trees at the back of the property, the similar condition exists in the rear. So there are 3-story towns that exist behind this that also have rear yard balconies as well. So there are that sort of existing context in this area. And I believe those may be closer to the property line than these, but there is that tree buffer at the rear of the lots to give those units privacy.
All right, thank you. That is helpful. Did you consult, by the way, with the neighbors to the back? Did that happen?
Yes, in this case, our neighbor across the street, yes, we did consult with them. Tony actually is the one, and then his mother all next door. The next one across, I think we talked to him, and ever since we talked to him, the person moved and a new person there. So I did have, we did went over to the street and discuss it with the neighbors there as well.
All right, thank you. Okay. Anything else before we go to our public portion? All right, so no speakers on my speaker list at this point, but going to make a call out there. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak to this application for minor variances? All right, I'm not seeing anybody come forward. So with that, then, members of the panel, we can go to a vote. All those in favor of the minor variances? All right. Okay, so for the record, the decision is unanimous. We are granting the application, so good luck, Mr. Husari.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, I think we're going to go back to applications 6 and 7 at this point. And I believe we're back with this. Could it be? We're the same agent. It just worked out really well. That's really good. Okay, in this one, we were going to fast track.
Declaration?
Yeah, I'm getting there because I'm looking at all things. Yeah. No, I know, but thank you. I do appreciate that, keeping me on my toes. All right, so let's start with that. Then we do need to do a notice change as well on this one. So do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the subject property to which the application applies, it was there for the prescribed number of days prior to the hearing, and that it was clearly visible and legible for the entirety of that time? Do you either swear or affirm that to be true?
Yes, I swear.
All right, so let's go to the housekeeping matter here in terms of the notice. So what I have here is a record that says that the lands to be severed, shown as part 1 on draft 4R plan filed with the application, will have a frontage of 8.68 meters on Boyer Road and a depth of striking 45.73 and replacing that with 45.69.
I think Mrs. Kelly will speak to that, but there was a correction that we discussed, and the lot width that we had on the notice was actually, or sorry, the lot depth that we had on the notice was actually correct. But I'll defer to Ms. Kelly on that one.
All right, Ms. Kelly. So no notice modification required. Is that what I'm?
Correct, through you, Madam Chair. The notice is correct.
Aha. Okay, perfect. Well, in that case, we'll just we'll move on with the next portion here. So, okay, I believe that we are not requesting a presentation on this application at this point. We've had a chance to look at the detail. Is there anyone on the panel who who has any questions about this application or either the consent or the minor variance application? Anyone? Mr. White, yes, please, go ahead. Mr. Wang, we're not at the public portion yet, so I'll get to you. Mr. White, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick question with respect to the lot area. I think I've found the answer myself. Minimum lot area requirements for these lots, 270 square meters, and provided is 397, 398. Is that, am I correct?
Ms. Kelly, can you confirm?
Through you, Madam Chair, both lots have a lot area of 397.2 square meters, so they both comply with the minimum lot area requirement.
And they substantially exceed, sorry, they
Yes.
substantially exceed?
Yes, they do.
Any further questions, Mr. White?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Mr. Wang? No, Mr. Wang, we're not there yet. I will call on you when I would like you to speak. So, members of the panel then, I just want to make sure that we've wrapped up our discussion before we go to the public portion. Some questions? All right. I do have a couple of people on my speakers list for these two items. I have, yeah, so I think, Mr. Wang, did you register to speak?
Yeah, I think I just want to clarify a little bit about this matter. I mean, variance. I'm new to this. I just don't know quite well about the whole process. I'm wondering, like, this minor variance is not going to follow the zoning bylaw. And looking at the application, there are other places on the same street which having minor variance, similar minor variance as well. So if we keep approving this kind of minor variance, then I mean we're going to have a lot of smaller lots on the neighborhood, and eventually, I mean the characteristic of the neighborhood going to getting changed. So this is what I'm a little worried about. I'm just wondering what's your opinion on this, right? So if we're saying, okay, we're allowing the smaller lot, okay, that's fine for this case. And next one, they come here, they say, okay, another smaller lot is okay. And eventually the whole characteristic of the neighborhood is going to change eventually. It's just a matter of time.
That's a very good point, Mr. Wang. So what we can ask the applicants to do to respond to that is to show the lotting plan that's specifically on Boyer Road. So typically, we ask for planning evidence, and we have had some. We have a planning report from them that provides us with information. But for the purposes of the hearing, we can have, if the coordinators could bring up the presentation that was filed, I'm assuming that as part of that presentation that you do have some evidence, planning evidence with regards to lot sizes in the vicinity of the subject application. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe we do have a little bit that touches on that. I think if we put up the slides, I might be able to point to that.
Have you got a slide number and specifically that we can ask the coordinators to bring up?
I will pull that up in a second and let you know. Sorry.
Slide 13.
Yeah, it would be slide 13. Sorry, I was just pulling up the presentation.
All right, so if we can have the coordinators do that, and then what I would like you to do, Mr. Soar or Ms. McQuaig, if you wouldn't mind speaking to the number of severances that have occurred already and essentially what the streetscape looks like today. So comparables, and I'm sure that's in your slides. So go ahead.
Sure. So I'll speak a little bit to what kind of severances have gone on. So, you know, it's difficult to tell just based off of this, which severances have gone on. We know that there's one severance, you see the property there in red, and that's listed as being narrower than the subject site. It's actually quite a bit narrower than the subject site and what we're proposing. The lot widths in this area are generally quite mixed, and I think you can sort of tell that from looking at this. You see along Boyer Road, there's some relatively large lots. There's also some narrower lots. There's lots even right next to the property that are quite a bit narrower than some of the other larger lots. And what you see in blue here are those lots that are quite similar in size to what we're proposing. So I think what this really shows is that there is a precedent along the street to have lots like this. This is not necessarily a street that has, very, very consistent lot widths. There is a little bit of a mix here that you're seeing. And so I do think that the characteristic of the lot widths here provides good support for the widths that we're proposing.
All right, and Mr. Sewer, can you point out then which properties? So I guess Mr. Wang's point in some of this is that, okay, notwithstanding the fact that we've already had some severances along the road, what properties remain that, in fact, to Mr. Wang's point, this sometimes will lead to additional minor variances. So I'm just trying to get a sense of exactly, are we opening it up to a huge change, or so which properties are at risk of further severance then that would possibly create similar lot sizes?
So I'd say it's difficult to preemptively say which ones would be the ones that would be in danger, I guess, of being severed. Probably one of the ones that are a similar sort of width as this lot. Those are the lots that would be prime candidates to be severed. There are some that you see in this area. But if I could mention as well, I do think, the bylaw requires a lot width of 9 meters. And what we're proposing is 8.68 and 8.69. So, you see on the slide here that it's a slight reduction of 0.32 and 0.31. But really, for that's like a foot, right? Like you're driving by, you're not going to notice a foot of difference in lot width. I personally don't think that that's really something that would be, something that's seen. So frankly, according to what the zoning bylaw permits, there could be lots that could be severed that would meet the zoning bylaw. There are some that might be severed that would not meet the zoning bylaw, and at that point, applications would be brought forward to the committee, and there would have to be an individual argument made for those applications when those applications are brought forward. And demonstrate that those are minor variances, that they meet the official plan and zoning, and that they're suitable and desirable. But I don't think it's really a process of you have a bunch of lots there and they're going to be severed, and your guys are going to abrogate the rules whenever you want. That's not really how the process would work. We have to demonstrate to you with planning evidence that that's that severance is something that makes sense, and that any minor variances aligns with the Planning Act criteria.
All right, thank you, Mr. Sir. I understand your comments, and I fully agree with your comments. Really, all I'm trying to establish here is what is the actual risk of significant change based on what the context is today. So Mr. Wang has made a comment that he's worried that now this is going to significantly, your application is going to significantly change the context of the entire street. What I'm trying to get at is how much of that context has already changed and what's the remaining risk, so to get an understanding. So, and you're right, we have to look at these things all individually, but I'm really trying to get at the same issue or just trying to answer Mr. Wang's question. And I think based on what you've been presenting here today, that in actual fact, there's already been a lot of change, and I don't see an awful lot of lots that are left for which there would be that kind of severance anyway. So from when I look at this lotting plan, it looks like we're already 50% there. So it's not like this application opens the floodgates. That's the point I'm trying to make. Yeah. So to respond to that concern that Mr. Wang has, that it's going to turn into nothing but small lots, it already is half small lots. So that was really where I was trying to go with that line of questioning, just so that we could understand that. And until you brought this up, I didn't have a picture of just how far we were with with getting to, with small frontages along that road front. Now we do. So thank you very much.
Fair
I
enough.
appreciate that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You articulated it much better than I could have. So thank you.
That's fine. So Mr. Wang, do you have any further questions? Because from what I can see, your concern is you're not in a context where this is a new thing.
Yeah, I was actually in the content. I'm just saying that there are a lot of lots already. I mean, servants and having smaller lots are created in the past, and then we just keep adding this. I mean, we can approve this one, but tomorrow another one come, and eventually the characteristic of whole street going to change. I mean, there won't be. And that time, I don't want to be a single only property allowed allocation. All the other property are all going to be smaller lot and only one big lot left, right? So this is the concern I'm having, and this is just a wave that's a escape coming, and eventually, if I know the city having this intensification or whatever it is, but eventually it's just a matter of time that everyone going to do the same thing, and eventually whoever left with bigger lot could have to adapt and have to change to the new characteristics of neighbor. So this is and yeah, so this is my concern is just maybe at some point it's just over intensification and in some areas. So
thank you, Mr. Wang, because I think what we've established is you're already in a context where that change is occurring. Any further questions? Anything else? Any other comments you'd like to make?
Yeah, I think I made my comments quite clear. I think it is, in my opinion, I mean, I disagree with the city's intensification kind of goal, and I feel that it's affecting the characteristic of a neighbor gradually. And it may not happen one day, it may be not one property, but as time go by and all of the property going to change. So this whole area is no longer going to be R2, it's going to be R3, and whoever left with a single house has to shift. So this is the issue I'm concerning.
All right, thank you, Mr. Wang. I think we do grasp now the extent of your concerns and the nature of your concerns. Any questions from the panel for Mr. Wang? Is there anyone else in the audience who'd like to come forward and speak either for or against this application? Actually, both to the consent application or the minor variance application at this point. All right, I'm not seeing anybody come forward, so I think we can go to a vote, but before we do that, Mr. Sewer, there is quite the laundry list of conditions. You've read them and you are in agreement with them all?
Yep, we've read the conditions and we agree with them. Yeah.
All right, okay. With that, then I think we can more comfortably go to the question of the consent. So all those in favor of the granting the consent application? All right, so for the record, the consent is unanimously granted. And on the question of the minor variances, all those in favor? All right, and again, for the record, the minor variances are unanimously granted, subject to the site plan came in with the application and all of the conditions. So with that, thank you very much. We appreciate your time. Thank you, Mr. Wang, for participating in the public portion. We always appreciate to hear from residents. So with that, we're going to go on to the next application, which I believe is could it be? It's our last application for the evening. Number 5 for 1015 Miss Ottawa. I'm looking again for Mr. Segreto.
Good evening, once again.
Good evening. Yes. I think you were the last application, Mr. Segreto.
I think so.
I think so. We got through our agenda in pretty good time this evening. So I'm going to read to you though. So do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted first at the property to which the application applies, that it was there for the prescribed number of days prior to the hearing, and that it was clearly visible and legible for the entirety of that time? Do I either swear or affirm that to be true?
I swear.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any changes required to the notice. So with that, then we're going to go to a presentation from you, please.
Can you have the coordinator put on my PowerPoint? So what we have in front of you here this evening is an application for consent and consent only. There are no minor variances. All aspects of the design that we did on this house here as well. It's a single family dwelling, do meet the performance standards. So we have a house at 1015 Miss Ottawa Street. And what my client would like to do is remove the garage off to the one side and create a lot which conforms to the bylaw. If you can go to the next slide. So that's just the site plan showing the existing bungalow and the existing detached garage to be demolished and the newly created lot. Next slide. This is the proposal, and what we're proposing is a two-story single-family dwelling which has a lot width of 9.75 and a lot depth of 45.75 meters. So we're looking at roughly an area for the newly created lot of 446 meters square. And I believe the bylaw only requires 240 square meters, so it exceeds it from a fair amount. The existing house is to be remained. We are creating a new parking space off to the left-hand side, as you can see, which will comply. And the owners are living there now. There's a beautiful swimming pool in the backyard, and they want to retain this house, and they would like to build a new house off to the right-hand side. Next slide, please. So this is the trees that are on the site, as you can clearly see with the new house outlined in gray. Those trees are fine. We're going to protect those trees. They're not going to get damaged, and they're not going to be removed. There's an existing tree in the front of the existing bungalow to remain, another one off to the side on the property line to remain, and then the trees in the back are to remain as well. Next slide, please. This is just the plan showing the subject property. And you can clearly see a similar lot, which is across the street at, I think it's, I don't know the address there, but it's highlighted in blue. There's a photograph of this house, I believe, but there is a lot which is similar to what we have. And there's a couple of more lots to the north of us that are on smaller lots. There's a mixtures of lots. I've heard you on the other application there. You can clearly see that there are some larger lots across the street that at some point in time, if somebody wanted to sever them, I guess they could be severed, but there are large lots, small lots, all sorts of lots in the area. Next slide, please. That is the house which is across the street at 1024 Miss Ottawa. It's got a lot width of 12 meters, 12.61, and a depth, I guess, of about 41 meters, which is similar to ours. Next slide, please. And that's the proposal of the house that we're planning to do. It's a modest little home. It's about 2,000 square feet or so. That would be for the ground floor, the second floor with the single car garage. Next. Next slide, please. And that's just outlining the area with the location of the subject property. Thank you very much. That's my presentation.
All right, any questions for Mr. Segreto on this application? Mr. Segreto, can you tell me a little bit about the consultation that you undertook?
Well, Madam Chair, that's a question you always ask me, and I always ask my clients to do that. And I did talk with Mr. Howard Cullen, who is the... I'm sorry. Hello?
Yeah, so I don't know who just spoke, but Mr. Segreto has the floor, so
yeah,
go ahead, please.
I always ask the homeowners to definitely talk to the adjacent budding neighbors and the neighbors at the rear and the neighbors across the street. I did send out a message to my client and he did talk to them. My understanding is that he did talk to them. There was some concern with the one neighbor off to the side of the house that had a number of issues and questions with respect to the construction of the house. When was it taking place? How long would it take and how close was it being constructed to their home? I believe if he's online, I don't know if he is or not, but he would be able to answer those questions better than I.
All right. And your client is Mr. Cullen and Ms.
Yes.
Beck, is that right? All right, so we may, let me just have a look. Coordinator, can you confirm whether we have Mr. Cullen or Ms. Peck as part of the participants?
Madam Chair, we do have Heather Peck online. I'm trying to promote her. It'll just take a second.
All right, thank you. Okay. Before we do that, though, I just want to make sure that panel members don't have any further questions then for Mr. Segreto about this application. All right. In which case, then we can go to the public portion of this, and I may very well come back to the owners to get some feedback from them on the consultation. So, but I do have Mr. Roger Dumont is the first person on my list. So Mr. Dumont, go ahead, please.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I got a few questions, concerns. What is the timeline that you guys give someone to build a new house? Are we looking at 6 months, a year?
That's a building department question, really. It's what's under the building code. What is the requirement? It's a lot more than 6 months. So yeah. I can't be sure, but I believe, and Mr. Segreto, maybe you have the answer to this, but I've always thought it was 2 years.
Okay.
Window. Anybody know for sure? No? Okay. Mr. Segreto, can you confirm?
My understanding is, I believe a building permit is good for 1 year, and then you can extend it at least for another 6 months. So basically, that would be the timeline. That's my understanding. It may have changed, but that's when we used to build. That's what it was. It's good for 1 year, and then you could extend it for another 6 months.
I would imagine that information is available on the city's website, but maybe Ms. Willis can give us more information.
I'm not sure I understand the question, because this is simply a consent application, correct? So they have to fulfill the conditions of the consent within 2 years of the approval of the committee, and they would have to get the deed stamped and that sort of thing to create the additional lot. But there's no requirement for when a building permit gets issued for a property that I'm aware of. It's just, it becomes two lots and instead of one.
That's very true. Thank you for that. I was somehow forgetting that, but that's exactly the case. So you can have a lot sit vacant for, and we had a couple of examples this evening where lots had remained vacant for several years before any construction occurred. I think the point that Mr. Segreto was making, though, is once you pull the trigger on that building permit, now you're under a clock. That's when the clock starts, not from the time that the lot is created.
Okay, I have another question, if possible. If the proposal is accepted, the other lot where there's the existing bungalow, is the owner going to be permitted to divide that again? Because if I believe there's room for another 2 houses there. So is that something that could come in the future?
Mr. Simon, I really can't answer that question, and it's not before us today.
Okay, so the applicant is allowed to build a house, then wait 1 year, 2 years, then ask to sever the other lot, then build another house?
Well, so anybody can make a request or can make application under the Planning Act. Doesn't mean you're going to get approvals for what you do.
Yeah. Because Miss Ottawa Street, there's lots of big lots on Miss Ottawa Street. And, if there's 10 big lots on Ottawa Street and everybody starts dividing them into 3 lots, well, then you won't have 10 families anymore. You're going to have 30 families. Now, I understand the city of Ottawa probably wants that, but it's certainly going to change the neighborhood, you know? It's not going to be as quiet. It's going to be more people. But that's just my concerns. I mean, you know.
All right. So, Ms. Is it Ms. Dower?
Miss Ottawa Street?
No. Trying to get planning staff to just tell me what the minimum lot area, minimum lot frontage is for that area. We have it in the staff report. I'm trying to find it. Ms. Ramirez.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the question. The minimum lot width is 9 meters and a minimum required lot area is 240 square meters. So there is the potential for further severance of the existing dwelling to be demolished. The owner could sever that property again, but that's not before us. So it's all hypothetical.
It is. It's just I just wanted to find out exactly what the lot frontage is to get some sense of just, how much intensification could occur. So thank you. I appreciate that. Any other questions, Mr. Zemo?
Not really. I mean, like the owner, he's allowed to build the house himself, obviously. He doesn't have to be a contractor.
As far as I know.
As far as you know.
I think there's certain trades. I'm not sure you can do your own electrical work in Ontario, but
of course, yeah. Okay, well, that's pretty well my questions and concerns. I mean, I just want to participate. I mean, it's usually in a meeting, I guess, where you go and everybody's in the room, but this is a little odd. I'm sure there's lots of older people in the neighborhood that wouldn't assist just the way the format is, but hey, that's how it goes. So that's all my comments and concerns. That's it.
Oh, I agree with you on that, Mr. Zemo. The public participation portion in person is definitely a different experience. So I agree with you on that. So, okay, and we may be in person in the coming months. So stay tuned on that one. All right. Any questions for Mr. Dumont from anybody in the panel? No? Okay, we're going to go to our second registered speaker now, which is Mr. Butt. Mr. Butt, your hand is up, so go ahead, please.
Good evening, Madam Chair. Okay, Roger has asked a couple of questions which I intended to ask. And one other concern that I have, I own the property on 1019 Miss Ottawa Street, which is the next door property. Facing the house is the right property on the right side. And I've owned that for last about 49 years, and I've lived there for 49 years. So it's one of those older properties. My concern is if they start, all the homes are sitting on clay there. And if they start digging near my house, it's an older house. My concern is that, and the foundations are made of cinder block. So if they're going to create enough, vibrations to affect the foundation of my house, and if they do damage that, who's responsible for that?
Again, that's outside of the committee's jurisdiction, and that's something that if I think either you could approach the building department themselves and try and have a discussion with somebody about some of those concerns, and talk to them about some of the methodologies that may be helpful in trying to ensure that that we mitigate those concerns with regards to vibration and any impact. I don't know how they treat that, but I'm sure there'd be a way for you to find out what the best approach is. Any ideas? I'm looking to either our planners or our Mr. Garnett. What would you suggest that Mr. Butt do?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would suggest referring to the Building Code Services branch. They may be able to provide some guidance on the city's role in construction activity. Beyond that, it may be a private matter between property owners.
All right. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Garnett. Appreciate that.
Is there any department I can contact to get more information?
I believe it's Building Code Services.
Building Code Services?
Yes.
I'll just jot it down here. And, you know, like the other concern I have is normally if a contractor builds the house, they have enough insurance to cover the damages. If they do damage something, they damage my property. And this gentleman said he's going to build a house. I had a chat with him last week, and he said he's going to build a house himself. So how can I find out if he has enough insurance in case he damages my property?
Well, that's an interesting question, and I'm not sure what the answer is to that. You may want to speak with Building Code Services again, because maybe they have a requirement that before you undertake work in the city of Ottawa, that you have to have proper coverage. I'm just assuming that that's probably something that they'll require of anybody who's building in the city. But again, it would be best for you to sort of direct your questions to those professionals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's, you know, again, my other question was what Roger asked, how long he's going to take, because if he's going to build it himself, I don't know, he might drag it for years, you know. I don't know what can we do if he, you know, drags the, you know, construction forever, you know.
Well, so my understanding is that when you pull a trigger on a building permit, there's a clock that's set, and there's a certain amount of time that's required to complete your construction. Now, you may want to find out just what that means. Does that mean that they have to have the driveway finished? Does that mean that they have to have the landscaping done? Chances are it's just the structure and not the site itself. But I don't know. It's not my area of expertise, and I would suggest again talk to Building Code Services.
Building Code Services. That's okay. Are they at 101 Center Point?
Are they? I'm seeing some nods. Mr. Garnett?
Yes, Madam Chair, they do have an office on the second floor at Ben Franklin Place, 101 Center Point.
Okay, I'll go try and get in touch with somebody there. And other than that, you know, that's about it. I guess those were my concerns.
All right, thank you, Mr. Batten. Thank you for participating. We appreciate it.
Okay, thank you for taking my questions. And I guess I'll get in touch with the Building Code Services then.
All right, good luck to you.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Bye now. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to speak either for or against this application? All right, I'm not seeing anybody else come forward. So committee, again, Mr. Segreto, before we go to a decision on this, you did see that there's quite a few conditions attached to the application. Hope you're on mute, Mr. Segreto. You're on mute.
I read through them all, and I'm fine with them. The cash and lieu and the trees and the whole 9 yards. It's all right.
All right. Okay. In that case, any final words from the panel? Or are you ready for a decision? Okay, then all those in favor of the application? All right. So then, for the record, Mr. Segreto, the application is unanimously granted. So thank you very much, and good luck.
Good evening. Thank you.
All right. All right, so that does take us to the end of this. So I need a motion to adjourn the hearing, the overall hearing. Mr. White, seconded by Ms. Markovich. So with that, again, thank you very much to our planning staff, Ms. Kelly, Ms. Bauer, Ms. Ramirez, and to our forestry representative, Ms. Yun. And again, thanks to our committee staff. Always appreciate everyone's assistance. It would not go as well without you. So thanks so much. And wish everybody else a great rest of your evening.